I just did all that muted. All right. Start as you intend to go. Uh, I guess starting it. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm Lady Chryseus. I hope you had a good day and are having a good night. Um, as I was saying, every other week, so every 2 weeks, I will talk about a book and some of the things related to it. I'll give some recommendations for similar books if you've already read this one or if it's not quite what you're looking for. And the goal is to do this spoiler free. So I don't want to ruin the book for you. I want you to be able to enjoy it at your own time in your own way. But it's just a suggestion. Something fun, because picking books can be hard. Let's be real. But yeah, so that's what these streams will be about. They're hey, have you heard of this book? Today's is about the novel Ballad and Dagger. It's newer in that it was published in 2022. So definitely on the spectrum of fantasy novels that I could have picked, I decided to go for a new one. Yeah. So this one in particular has some really strong ties. Ties is the best way to music and musicality. If you like jazz, if you like no correction, if you like talking about jazz, this book is very much one that you would probably enjoy. There's a lot of terminology in it. There's a lot of things in the music that is more common in jazz and Hispanic music than say classical. Is the background music too loud? Hang on, let me see if I could. If I do this, y'all don't see that, right? No, of course not. Is that better? I hope that's better. Now, how do I minimize this thing? Yeah, I'm so right. So that's what this is going to be about. It shouldn't. It's not supposed to be a long stream. They should be relatively short. Just long enough to talk about the books, to talk about some related topics, to chat a bit. Nothing too long, nothing too crazy. So yeah. So should we get started? Let's see. All right, can you see my obligatory? I don't own this book. I don't own the book. I don't own the cover art and illustration. But it's kind of hard to talk about the book without having the cover. Well, I could talk about it without the cover, but it's more fun if you can actually see what the book you're looking for looks like. Look, I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but let's be real. If you are looking for a book, it's easier to find it based off of the cover sometimes. Until the cover changes, and then you just have to pray. Oh, good, 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 good. That's great. Right. So if I do this, oh gosh, you can see that. Can you not? There. There we go. So we are talking about Ballad and Dagger by Daniel Jose Older. It is. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of fun. In terms of speed of reading, ease of reading. For me, it was a slow start, but once it got going, it got going. And that might have just been me, and that's the thing. That's the wonderful thing about books, is that they're very subjective. Yeah. So it is published by Hyperion, which is I believe it's Hyperion Disney, in 2022. This is actually published under the Riordan. It's the Riordan subheading. I can't. The term escapes me. But they are books that are curated by the author of. Curated is probably the wrong word. Vetted by the author of the Percy Jackson books. This is part of a series called Outlaw Saints. At the moment, it is a duology, so the second book came out recently, or is coming out recently. It either came out in March or it's coming out in May. It's one of those. It's an M month. But so that's the boring but important publishing details. If you wanted to know, yes, it is part of a series. Yes, it is book one. I will try, if I can, to grab the beginning of the series, unless I, for some reason, if the books don't really need to go in order, or if I think the first book is not the only starting spot, then I might suggest a different one. But I'll be trying to start at the beginning of series if I'm doing series. So this is the original cover, by Irvin Rodriguez, and the actual design, layout, the text printing is done by Phil Buchanan. Either my research skills were bad, or they are normal. Why can't I think? I wasn't able to find that's what I was trying to say. I wasn't able to find a list of everything they've done. Phil has designed several children's and young adult covers, and I believe the artist, Irvin Rodriguez, has done comics. I wasn't able to find exact titles, but that's what it said. About the author, this is he has also done comics. So he is a New York Times bestselling author. He has done the comic book versions of Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures. He's done some of the novels that are of. I don't know if they're in the same series, but they're very similar. And he's also, if you enjoy this book, he also wrote the Shadow Shaper Cipher, which is another series. So if you like him, check out his other stuff. um, so yeah, that's the base we're working from. So what do you need to know about Ballad and Dagger? The main high points, without spoiling anything, of course, are it is set in modern times with a male main character. Um, it's a lot of fun. He reads very much like the teenager he is. It's really nice. It is focused on music, so there is a lot of talk about music, music theory, songs in general. Very similar to In the Heights, the musical In the Heights, where just living is kind of the music. That's a very similar feeling to the writing here. The music is part of just living. There are multiple languages, which means please don't be like me. There is a glossary. I will mention this later, but there is a glossary. Please use it. Or keep a phone, tablet, computer with Google Translate nearby, because I tried to do it with context clues, and sometimes it was frustrating. And then I finished the book and saw there was a glossary, and felt very silly. It is about a diaspora. So, a group of people who can no longer live in their homeland, who have been scattered. That is the main. I don't want to say oddity because it isn't. Oh, it is primarily in English, but it's also Spanish, Ladino, and there's another one. I do have a slide for that as well. But if you have some basic knowledge of Spanish, even if it's just like some general knowledge about how the language works, not even like grammar or anything, just some basic vocabulary words, you'll be able to get a lot of it. If you know escucha, you'll be doing great. That one's all over the place. Just listen. But yes, so that will help you out a lot. Um, my 3 years of French and 3 semesters of Spanish did not help me. But that is part of it. The languages and the diaspora are related. They coincide. So and the other thing, and this seems a little pedantic, but it really isn't, is that there's some really well written female characters. Just they're people. I have a slide I will explain in a second, but they're just people. They're great. That is one of the very strong points of this book, is all of your people, your main character, your antagonists, all of the side characters, they're all people, and they all read as people and come across that way. So you're never going, oh, well, that doesn't seem believable. It's like, oh, no, a teenager would absolutely do that. Absolutely. That is exactly how that would go. So your main character is Mateo Matisse. He's a 16-year-old. he wants to play music. That is his primary goal in life. You learn that at the very beginning of chapter 1. His goal is to play music. Um, he has someone he hero worships who he wants to uh, play with more than anything. He doesn't want to be the frontliner. He wants to be in the background. Um, in the book, it's frequently said spiritu, the spirit. So not necessarily, not the big flashy one, but he's a pianist. So he is very much someone who is still driving the music and living the music, but he is not necessarily wanting the glory of music. He feels like an outsider in a very tight knit community. Um, so he is his parents are part of the community, but they are doctors, and so they travel. So he grew up a little bit in the community, a little bit on the road. Um, so when at this point, at the point the book starts, he is back to living among the community. Feels like, oh well, I wasn't here, so clearly I'm not really a part of it, but I want to be. It's something like that. Wanting to be yourself, wanting to stand out, wanting to be both different and accepted at the same time. He is he is so anxious. He's just a ball of anxiety. It's honestly it's one of the most relatable things about him. He's nervous about a lot. He second guesses himself about a lot. But the voice is so real. You know why he's anxious. It's not just, oh, you're over there being, weird and anxious, just go talk to person B. It's, oh no, you have thoroughly explained why you are so concerned. I understand. He's very believable. And he is it's hard to say he's a hero. He is very much the hero of his story, but he's also just so normal. It's nice. It's really nice. For a book that is both a modern fantasy and so grounded. It's just really nice to see it. This I probably should have mentioned that. This book is fantasy. Um, it's modern fantasy. Um, it's set in Brooklyn, in a non-existent but could exist subsection of Brooklyn. So that's how that works. Mateo is great. Like I said, he's a ball of anxiety. You can point at him and be like, I am him. I know him. I've seen him. It's really nice. So, music. As I said at the very beginning of... was I muted for that part? Well, if I was, I'll say it again. If you have any knowledge of jazz music theory, Hispanic music. So, it's not so much the music as the magic. It is... That's not true, but the music is not the driving force of the magic. The music is the way that Mateo connects to the world. It is what drives him and moves him, and so to him everything relates back to music. It's how he views the world. It's how he explains the world. The rhythm of the city, the rhythm of the day, the rhythm of the community, little things like that. It's not so much he's casting spells through singing. Um, it's a quieter kind of thing. Um, I'm not gonna get too much into the fantasy element. I will say it's there. I will say it's integrated very well. Um, so, but I'm not entirely sure I can start talking about it and stay spoiler free. It's really well done. I really enjoyed it. Um, uh, as I said, if you have some knowledge of music theory, or you know jazz, or familiar with uh, with Latin style music, that will help you. You'll be able to relate to things. At one point, he talks about the clava. At some points, he's talking about certain rhythms. Those help, but they aren't required. So there are things that he will bring up at some point, and if you need to understand them for the story, he will explain it. The narration of the whole thing will explain it. So it's a nice bonus, but it's not necessary. Um, if you aren't a huge fan of music, it might not be the book for you. Like I said, because music is how Mateo views the world. It's how he relates to everything. It all comes back to music and to silence and the absence of music. Um, when the music falls silent, things are strained. Um, so there are multiple languages. I knew I was going to need to write these down. Um, uh, Most, if not all, of the characters in the book speak multiple languages. Um, English is the primary language of the novel, but your characters will speak Spanish, Ladino, or Lusumi. I apologize if I pronounced that one wrong. Um, but those are the primary languages. Again, if you have some knowledge of Spanish or of one of the Latin-based languages, that'll help you out. Ladino is the Latin-based Jewish language. So if you know that, that is what that is, from the Iberian Peninsula. Um, there is a glossary at the back of the book. I wrote this down because I didn't know. I have told you now. Please use it. I did get by on context clues, but I will admit that was very frustrating for me. I felt very, very silly when I got to the back of the book. I was like, oh, there's a glossary. That would have been good to know, like, in chapter 1. That I will admit, that can be a frustration. So please use the glossary. It is your friend, especially if you don't speak Spanish or aren't familiar with some vocabulary words. Oh, there are snippets of songs, snippets of poems that start each section of the book. So in addition to chapters, there are major sections of the book, and each section starts with either a poem or a song. The really nice thing about this is that it's written on one page in English and on the other page in, I think it's in Spanish, but I'm not as familiar with the other two languages, with Ladino and Lusumi, to say it's not in those. So it is in another language, but the translation is there and available. Again, take advantage of this. it's really nice. So the diaspora. It is set in Brooklyn. like a high level, if you were going to point at where on the map does this take place, New York. However, the people are more of a setting than the place. Um, with very few exceptions, if it didn't say Brooklyn, it wouldn't matter. I never got so far outside of where the people were that I was like, oh right, this is in New York. That was never a thing. To be fair, I am not exceedingly familiar with New York, outside of book knowledge and then pop culture media knowledge, and a little bit of research. So I can't say, oh yes, this is normal life living in Brooklyn or any of the boroughs. I do not know. To me, that was not the real setting. The real setting was the diaspora. They are from the island of San Madrigal, which sank beneath the waves, and they fled. So they have this little corner of Brooklyn, and they keep all of their traditions alive. So a diaspora is a people who can no longer live in their homeland. They have been driven out by something, and cannot be there. They have fled, for whatever reason. Typically, wars and famines cause diaspora. World wars cause diaspora. And the interesting thing, from both a story setting and a real world thing, is that the San Madrigal community, being made up of pirates, Santaros, and Sephardim? I apologize for that word. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I promise I looked it up and everything. My brain did not hold on to it. I'm so sorry. But of those three groups, two of them are real world diaspora. The Sephardim are the ones who speak Ladino. They are the Jewish diaspora that were in the Iberian Peninsula and then fled from there. Well, they fled to there and then they fled further. And then the Santaros are also a diaspora that settled in primarily Cuba. They primarily practice Santeria, which is a mix of Catholicism and African cultures. But it's very interesting to see real world and one could argue pirates themselves are kind of a diaspora as well. Not necessarily, because some of them are by choice, but but so it is very, very interesting to see a diaspora made up of real world. It's very, very interesting. You've got a synagogue right alongside some Catholic beliefs and faiths. It's really nice. It's really different. Well, it was different to me, at the very least. So the female characters, I said they were well written. I absolutely mean it. All of the women in this book are both softness and edge. They're people as people. The most fearsome of them can be all like pretty and dressed up and not like prom queen descriptions of dressed up, but but very much, oh yes, I got dressed up for a party, and it doesn't matter that, 3 days ago I was in, you know, jeans and a hoodie and being all scary. I don't want to be scary today, so I'm not, and that's my choice, and you can't tell me what to do. That's very much, all of the women are very fierce and wonderful. Uh, it's a lovely subversion of the men writing women trope. Um, they act like the people. They don't act like the stereotypes. I wrote down uh, four of the main ones you see. So you get Tia Lucia, who is Matea's. No, scary for me. Who is Tia Lucia's. Oh, sorry, Tia Lucia is Mateo's, and sorry about that. She takes no nonsense. She's very firm in her faith and her beliefs. If she tells Mateo, hey, you're going to this thing, it's like, well, I don't want to. Yeah, that's not an option. Not wanting to does not come into this equation. Anisette is the current leader of the pirates. And if you think that means she is a very powerful, no-nonsense, charismatic woman, you are in fact correct. She is all of these things, and it is delightful. Cella is one of Mateo's classmates. She is quiet, has opinions, and shouldn't be brushed aside. It's not so much of, oh, the quiet ones are the ones you need to watch out for. It's more of, don't forget that these are people too. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be a person. And then Tams is Mateo's best friend. And she is wonderful and doesn't let him get too inside his head. And when he does, she comes along and gets him out of it. Although she doesn't... It's not like she bails him out of trouble. Like, even the trouble he makes for himself. It's more a matter of, oh, you're stuck in your head? Let me get you out of that space. Cool, you've made these problems. You should probably do something about it. At no point do any of these women solve Mateo's problems for him. Much like any of the people in your life, they don't solve your problems for you. They're there as sounding boards, as differing views. And that's exactly how they function. And sometimes he listens, and sometimes he doesn't. And, that's how people function anyway. So, I have some other recommendations. If you like Ballad and Dagger, if you've already read Ballad and Dagger, you're like, yeah, I've read it, cool. There is a sequel. Go read the sequel. If it doesn't quite sound up your alley, if you're like, yeah, there's a lot of music in that, and that's not my thing, or you said there was magic in that, that's not always my thing. I do have some suggestions. They all have a teenage male main character. Also, if anything shows up on like these recommendations slides, that doesn't mean I won't do an actual breakdown presentation trailer for them later. It just means that in some way, shape, or form, they relate to this book, and so I thought, hey, you liked one, you may like the other, or hey, it was close to what you wanted, but not exact. The Ranger's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlin, is the first book in the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanagan. There is minimal magic in that. It is in a medieval setting. It's kind of exactly what it says it is. It's about a ranger's apprentice, um, and he is a stubborn fool, but it is a lovely series. It is a longer series, but if you just want to read the first one stands on its own legs. You can read that and be happy and be done. This next one is Shipbreaker. It also is light on magic, by Paolo Bagalupi. Apologies if I mispronounce any names. Um, it is a post-apocalyptic, which I know that doesn't sound anything like the rest of this, but it is a post-apocalyptic adventure story. Um, it's almost like Treasure Island meets Homeward Bound, which is a very strange pairing now that I've said it, but it's a journey. It's a hero's journey adventure type, but it's set in a post-apocalyptic. Your main character is a scavenger. That's the easiest way to explain him, is as a scavenger. The Squire's Tale, again, is part of a series by Gerald Morris. It does have magic. Specifically, it has the Fae and the Fair Folk. It is set in Arthurian times, and follows a would-be squire, who, spoiler, very early on, does end up becoming squire to Sir Gawain, as in Sir Gawain the Green Knight. So a lot of interesting court politics and drama. A lot of the knights being silly, but again, there is magic in that one. There are fair folk, good and bad. And then the last one, I don't know if Bod counts as a teenager. He isn't a teenager for most of the book, but I couldn't leave this one off when we're talking about really good male main characters. The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. It's a nice spooky book that isn't actually spooky. It is technically, of all of these, it is probably the one aimed towards the youngest audience. But it is good for everyone. About a boy who is raised in a graveyard, and what that means for a living child raised by ghosts. He's got some various teachers and things that he can't do because he isn't dead. And interactions and stuff like that. It's a really good book. I like most of the stuff Neil Gaiman writes. So, is there a little bit of bias? Yes, there is. But that's the whole point in giving book recommendations, is they're going to be biased towards the books I've read. And it's easier for me to give good recommendations if I enjoyed them. But if you're looking at this list and going, man, that's a lot of guys, hang on, I got you. Inadvertently, most of these also fit the strong female category. But all of these are books where music is either an element of the magic, a driving force of the song, a major almost character for some of these. The first one is Dragon Song by Anne McCaffrey. Again, part of a series. The first in the Harpercraft Hall trilogy, which, as you can imply, based off of that name, involves harpers, which are singing historians, is the easiest way to explain harpers. They are singing historians. It's set on the planet of Pern. It's one of those It's one of those series where technically, this series deals very little with the sci-fi aspects of the world, but the Pern series overall, if you want a more sci-fi, Pern's got that for you too. But this is following a girl who wants to be a harper, but harpers are not women. Women are not harpers, and her entire hold, her entire little civilization town, basically says, "No, you can't do that. Let us do everything we can to stop you from doing that." And she winds up going on an adventure, uh, because it's a fantasy story. um, Soul Music by Terry Pratchett. So I feel like I need a caveat. I should have put an asterisk next to this one. Terry Pratchett and his Discworld series are satire. That does not mean this is not a book about music. It just means take everything that's said with a grain of, oh, this is poking fun at something, isn't it? From the title to the very premise, it has to do with death. I mean, literally with death, and music and instruments. I don't know how to explain this one very well. It's a lot of fun. If you've read any of the other Discworld books, I believe both Susan and Death are in this one. It's been a minute since I read it. Death for sure is. And it's always a good time when those two show up. They have some of the best humor in the whole series. But yes, Soul Music is a lot of fun. Again, if I remember correctly, he wants to become... It's either I want to become famous or I want everybody to like my music. Something like that. Somehow the undead get involved. That's how that goes. Fairest by Gail Carson Levine is technically a companion novel. And by that I mean it's written in the same world. And yes, so yes, if you've read or watched The Hogfather or The Color of Magic, this is Soul Music is from that world. It's from Discworld. Riding on the back of 4 elephants standing upon the great turtle Autun flying through space. That Discworld, yes. And with that lovely description of the world, you can kind of see why I say it's hard to explain. So Fairest by Gail Carson Levine is a companion to Ella Enchanted, actually. The book, not the movie. And so it takes place in the same world, although not in the same kingdom. And there are a few familiar faces if you've read that. If you haven't, it doesn't really affect whether or not you can enjoy this. You've got a whole new cast of characters. Nothing in this book relies on you knowing Ella Enchanted. It's just Easter eggs. It is a retelling of Snow White. So, as the name implies, it's a retelling of Snow White. However, music and song are very important in this. What makes you beautiful? It's that kind of a story. What would you trade for beauty? How do people view beauty? What you think is beautiful, others may not. So that is Fairest. It's a lot of fun. It's fantasy, lots of magic, lots of magical creatures and magical folk. Again, it's a retelling of Snow White. And then there's the naming. Earlier, the question was asked of, oh, the music is magic. In the naming, the music is magic. It's also a bit of a play on true names, so names are also magic. Um, there is, again, you're following a character who she's got a reluctant mentor, but it's one of those of, oh yeah, you have this ability. Hope I train you in it before A, I die, or B, you wind up killing somebody. It's one of those kind of books. Um, it's not the easiest read. I will say of all the books in the recommended list, probably the two that are easiest to read are Fairest and Squire's Tale. I was like, oh wait, what was that other book? I've talked about so many. The Squire's Tale. The naming is very dense, very heavy on the world building. Again, the music is very important, but be prepared for some heavy world building, and some heavy politics in that one, because the politics of the world plays into all of that. So that is Ballad and Dagger, and the recommendations if you didn't exactly want Ballad and Dagger and you just wanted something similar in some way, or you just wanted, or you've already read Ballad and Dagger and want something different. So that's the books. I enjoyed Ballad and Dagger. Oh, something I did want to mention. It has Ballad and Dagger only has one standard cover, and then it's got a special edition cover through a subscription service. In the future, if I talk about a book that has multiple covers, I will try to show the covers, if they're international covers or if they're just prior printings. I will admit I have certain books where I prefer earlier printing covers, as opposed to the either currently available one or the international one or the more popular one. So that's I will try to make note of that in the future. So if you ever see, oh, this cover, I can't find this cover, well, I am so sorry. I have given you a bad cover, but I will try to include. Oh no, hang on a second, I'm about to sneeze. Sorry about that. Oh no, I'm not a hipster. Honestly, I will be the first one to tell you. Sometimes I prefer the less cool covers. um, Sometimes I don't know if the trend has gone away, but for a while the trend was to do more photo manipulation covers than illustrations, um, and they were interesting, but they weren't my preference. I prefer more actual, like, drawn or painted or illustrated covers. Even if it's digital illustration, that's fine. Um, clearly, but I prefer illustrated covers to the more photo ones. Even for like some of the modern books. So like the Harry Potter covers, I prefer the illustrated covers. Lord of the Rings, I prefer the illustrated covers. Percy Jackson, I prefer the illustrated covers. Like, I don't need the movie cover. Like, if I want the movie, I'll buy the movie. I don't need you to put that on my book. Just give me something cool on my book, please. Sorry. Um, as far as music goes, I know I just talked a lot about a book that Latin music and jazz are a big part of. Um, to be frankly honest, I'm not a fan of jazz. I know about it because I have family members who enjoy jazz, and I have a friend who likes jazz. Um, and maybe that's part of why the beginning of the book was so slow for me. Um, that's not that's not my preferred form of music. Um, I am more likely to be listening to musicals uh, because I am silly and I think they're fun. And I think that more things should be turned into musicals because that's also fun. um, there are a few composers that I like who do jazz, but they also do other things, and so I'm more likely to like their other things than their jazz things. Um, Things like Henry Mancini, who did the Pink Panther theme. He does a lot of jazzy stuff, but I prefer Baby Elephant Walk and the Pink Panther, so like, I don't know what to say to that. Would a jazz? No, no. This is very much one where go find Lin Manuel Miranda and throw him at this, and this would be right up his alley. Uh, Not because it wouldn't have jazz in it. It absolutely would, to keep faithful. But his styling and his ability to relate the people to the music, to the place, to the whole theme of everything. Yep, that's exactly how that would go. I would listen to that. Even if I didn't enjoy the jazz songs, I would listen to that. I was trying to think, is there a jazz song that I really like? I feel like there is. Chronometry. There is a jazz song called Chronometry. It makes no sense, but I really enjoy it. It's an instrumental. So when I say it makes no sense, I don't mean the words make no sense. I just mean the music makes no sense. Because if I sat here and described it to you, you'd be like, "That's not music." So yeah, like, it's not my favorite, but I can have a few songs I can pick out of that genre. Um, Maybe that's another thing to be aware of. If you're not a huge fan of jazz, this book may be slow for you. Still worth the read though. Like I said, when it picks up and hits the ground running. It's more establishing who Mateo is that takes a bit. He's not necessarily an intuitive guy. Uh, so, and that's very apparent in how he's written. So sometimes you're like, oh, wait, they didn't say that earlier. And then it's like Tams, his best friend, will be like, yes, they did. You just weren't listening because you were stuck in your head. And you're like, oh, oopsie. Man, I wish I knew that as the reader. But it's really nice. It's kind of nice that you don't know that as the reader, actually. You very much experience the story with Mateo. It's very nice. He has a level of understanding beyond the reader, but it's never really slowed down for that. Other than the very beginning, like the very beginning, there's a lot of here is who these people are. Here is what the island was and why that's a big deal. And oh, it sank. That's how that one goes. As far as I was gonna say other books that are similar, but I don't have a good analog for it. Like, not in the same way. Uh, I'm trying to think of another book where the people are more of your setting than your actual setting. Um, some of the Redwall books, I guess. But if you don't like talking animals, that one's not for you. um, as far as the related books I mentioned, Shipbreaker is a post-apocalyptic one. It's a lot of fun. Um, if you want airships, a variation for Shipbreaker, which is very much not an airship book. If you want one about airships, it is Kenneth Opel has a series that deals with airships. That one's a lot of fun too. Again, that one's more steampunk than future. I mean, it is futuristic, but it's not. It's not. um, no, Goblin Secrets doesn't count. There are um, there are some really nice books with music in them. Um, if you want to go all the way back to Tolkien, you can. His absolutely had music. Um, I am partial, if we're talking about books that have songs, poems, or prophecies in them. I'm glad you made it. Uh, if we're talking about books with songs, poems, or prophecies, the Dark is Rising sequence is a personal favorite. Always a good read. You don't necessarily need to read it in order. I didn't. I did go back eventually and put them all in order so that my brain could put the poor things together. But it has some really great poems in it. Has some really great prophecies that are written very well. I'm a sucker for a good rhyme. Give me some poems that rhyme. I'll probably be happy. If it happens to be a prophecy, that's fine too. That is Susan Cooper. So that's who does The Dark is Rising. It's a lot of fun. Like, it's heavy in well, half of it's heavy in magic, half of it is not. Half of it is very boxcar children, but British. But the other half of that series is very much heavy in the magic, heavy in that sort of thing. The old ones, the last of the old ones, that kind of story. Other books that have been turned into musicals. Peter and the Starcatchers, I believe, had a musical. The Percy Jackson book, The Lightning Thief, has a musical. It's wonderful. It's a lot of fun. It's silly, it's fun. Goosebumps has a musical. Um, oh, I may be ending this early. um, yes. So yeah, the Percy Jackson musical is a lot of fun. Um, it's not. I mean, to be expected from any kind of adaptation like that. It's not completely book accurate, but it is in the spirit, and I'll give it that. Sometimes that matters more than strict accuracy, anyway. Uh, I'm trying to think off the top of my head of other musicals. And my mind is just blank. Oh, this is. Mm-hmm. um. Oh, if you want another recommendation for books with Spanish elements, um, Together We Burn is a really fun one. It's magic, but not really. Um, think How to Train Your Dragons kind of magic. um, the movie, not the books. Um, it's about a flamenco dancer and a dragon tamer. So, oh, yeah, no, that's the obvious one that completely slipped my mind. Phantom of the Opera is, in fact, a musical based on a book. Uh, Not quite in the spirit of the book either, but that one's also a lot of fun. Um, yeah, my personal opinion is that the Phantom should win, uh, and everything is Christine's fault. uh, look. My brain is currently uh, all over the place. I am not entirely sure how I forgot that. I'm like books and musicals, and all that was coming to mind was things that were like Jekyll and Hyde. Look, Jekyll and Hyde, the Count of Monte Cristo. Look, now they're coming. Frankenstein has a musical. No. I promise. I both read and listen to musicals. I swear. uh, oh yeah. No, the Phantom has some of the best lines. Um, he gets done dirty through both the book and the movie, and well, the book, the movie, the musical, the movie based off of the musical. Yeah, no, like I'm absolutely gonna root for him every time. Not that I want him necessarily with Christine every time. I just would like him to win every time. I mean, yes, he has some issues. Some rather glaring personal flaws. um, it is a great soundtrack. Um, I had a friend who actually had a broken version of the soundtrack, or it wasn't broken, but it wasn't the actual soundtrack. It was actually all the in between music. So like, she had the Battle at the Crypt, but instead of it being the actual like instrumental Battle of the Crypt music, it's like all of the like sword clangs and the grunts, and I was like, how did you get this? And the hilarious thing was, we compared our discs, CDs, yay. The covers were the exact same. The discs said they were the same, but you put in her disc and it was like all of the sounds, not the music. It did have notes actually, which jealous, but she returned it and got a different disc so she could actually have the music to sing along to, which fair, but I would have just bought a second disc. I would have kept that. I would have bought a second disc. Yes, it was the sword track, not the soundtrack. That is absolutely true. I absolutely would have kept that disc and just bought a second one and been like, oops. Sorry, I had to buy two. Yeah. No, Phantom and well, Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd is a Penny Dreadful, technically. So yeah, no, a lot of musicals are actually based off of literary works, but yeah, no, my brain was just not firing. Trust someone to be like, how did you miss Phantom? It's only like the biggest of deals. I could be evil and mention Cats. Cats is also based off of literature. I'm not saying it's enjoyable. It's interesting. Learning some of the theory around it, but well, it's not too much of a sidetrack. Like, it still involves music. That's fine. Yeah, I do recommend The Count of Monte Cristo. If you haven't if you need a good murder and revenge musical, it doesn't get much better than that. It's a lot of fun. It's as expected from The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a lot of people getting what's coming to them. Let's see. Oh, that tracking is acting up. So, I'm gonna be honest. I have listened to the Tuck Everlasting musical. I enjoy listening to the Tuck Everlasting musical. I've read the book. I do not understand. Like, I don't get the big deal with the book. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Why is my... Hang on. Hang on, darlings. My tracking is being dumb. Let's see if I can fix it right quick. Alright, can we see my face now? Are you tracking? Okay, there. We're tracking better. Yay! I don't know why that broke. I didn't like Tuck Everlasting. I didn't read it in school, to be fair. I absolutely didn't. I read it afterwards of my own volition. Man, has my tracking been that bad all night? Oh. Well, fixed it now, I guess. Oops. Yeah, actually, I would say that would be a fun one to do side by side. Of comparing the book to the musical. I mean, you could always do my least favorite Shakespeare, and compare it to West Side Story. Oh, you had to read it in school. Did you like it? Because, like I said, I read it voluntarily after the fact, and I was just like, why is this a big deal? And then I heard the musical, and I liked the musical, but I'm like, this musical is way too good for the story it's based off of. I'm terrible, aren't I? Oh, my tracking doesn't like my mic. Haha. Too bad it's staying. Uh, okay, that one is not. There is not a musical of that. There should never be a musical of that. That one, I can imagine. Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh, that one. I wish that one was uh, less historically problematic. Um, it's not exactly a kind play. And not that plays need to be kind, mind you, but like. There are things in that play that I desperately wish weren't there. To be fair, there are also things in classical Greek literature that I desperately wish was not there. The Greeks did not ask my opinion. Oh no. They're all justice warriors, yeah? Oh, yeah, no. I mean, look. Look, between Zeus and Pandora, like, can we just accept that the Greeks had some very low opinions on women? uh, yeah, no, I don't have a good way to explain that it was a different time. I mean, it was a different time when the play was written. It was a different time when the play was written about, and that doesn't make it okay by today's standards. But that was the views of the time. I mean, come on, if Disney can clean and sanitize Zeus up for child uh for like childhood movies and children to watch, like give Shakespeare some grace. Ooh, that's some problems. Yeah. No, trust me, I wish more of like some of the older literature. Oh, oh, actually, I can relate this back to Ballad and Dagger. The author of tracking. The author of Ballad and Dagger helped get. Oh no, I'm going to forget which award it is. One of the literary awards used to have the actual award was a bust of Lovecraft. And he was part of the driving force of getting that changed because that is not a person we want on our literary awards. No, it is not, because he was not a good human. The less we can talk about Lovecraft the human, the better. But, like I said, um, uh, I had his. Oh, I have the book right here. I can look it up. I'm over here going, I can't remember his name. Daniel Jose Older. He helped get that changed, so it is no longer a very problematic man being used as the figurehead for literary awards. Like we can appreciate his horror without appreciating his everything else. Yikes. Oh, good. That's working too. Excellent. Sorry, just checking something on the back to make sure that my stream wasn't dropping. Let me think. Other books. I mean, to be fair, Phantom of the Opera does fall into the category of books where music is a big deal. It's less of a big deal than you'd think. It's more of a big deal because a musical's been made out of it than it is because the book itself. Like, yes, it takes place in a theater. Yes, there's the opera-ness of it all. But it's important. But it's not the be-all, end-all. Like, you take it out and you don't have Phantom of the Opera anymore. That is true. Oh, so, in case you missed it, these should be every other week or every 2 weeks. However you want to think of that. It's not happening twice in a row. I can't read that fast. The next one should be something older. Yeah, something older. To be fair, this one was from 2022, so older is not hard. But it will be something a bit older. It will still be fantasy, and I can't promise that most of these won't be fantasy. I like reading fantasy. It's a thing for me. I feel like everybody should. But I will try to not make it all the same kind of fantasy. The nice thing about fantasy as a genre is it's a pretty big umbrella, and so a lot of modern fantasy and high fantasy and weird pseudo sci-fi-ish fantasy. Yes, I have two of those in mind when I say that. You know, steampunk is technically fantasy. Oh, and as for the typical range, it's gonna be anything. Sometimes, like this one is a young adult novel. Sometimes there'll be adult novels. Sometimes there'll be children's books. Honestly, I don't care who the intended audience is. I care if the book is good. So if I think the book is good, or if I think someone should read it, even if it's not my favorite, I'm willing to talk about it. I'm not a huge fan of mysteries. I will probably talk about a mystery at some point. That's probably inevitable. Alright, I think I'm gonna wrap this up a little earlier than anticipated. So thank you for coming. Like I said, I will be talking about an older book next time. So that will be in 2 weeks. I will try to I'll try to set up the stream ahead of time so that it'll already be there. No promises. I will try. We'll see if I find out what I'm doing. I will try not to start the next stream muted. Thanks for coming, guys. See you next time.